Good morning, everyone. This is Sunday Session. My name is Chuck Williams, and we're here at the Foundation of Human Understanding. I listened to a guy on YouTube. He does a daily blog, and he just records 45 minutes of his thoughts. And he's a well-known cartoonist. His cartoons are famous, and he's become famous since he started these blogs. His name is Scott Adams, and he was just doing his regular comment on political items, and then at the end of his little spiel, he brought up something that I thought was fascinating, because this is a guy who tries to be logical, rational, and he says he's sort of an agnostic. He doesn't really believe in God. He's not religious. He likes to give everybody a fair shake. He says, don't jump to conclusions about somebody. Let's just wait and see. And he's got his own way of thinking about things and tries to be systematic in what he does. But he said that over his lifetime, he has several times had these experiences that are like foreboding or a foreshadowing of something that's going to happen to him. And it's different than an idea or a thought that comes to him. He says it's way different than a thought, and it's not a dream. It's just a clear implication that something's going to happen. And one of the examples he gave was that when he was younger and living in New York, one day he just had this clear knowledge that he was going to go to San Francisco, which he thought was ridiculous. Within the 3 months, he had moved to San Francisco. And all these events happened, and he just ended up there. So he mentioned a couple of other examples, so it made him a little more conscious that these kinds of knowings, foreknowings, whatever you want to call them, have some meaning in his life, but he doesn't know why. So he said when he moved into his new house 10 years ago, they had a house built, and it was a real fancy house because he makes a lot of money. He said we put in a new bathroom for the master bathroom, and it had a special, real fancy deal. It had a special valve on the shower that you could turn and adjust the amount of hot or cold in your water. So you could decide how hot you wanted the hot to be and how cold you wanted the hot to be. And he said when they put that in, the first time I looked at that, somehow I had this knowledge that I should never adjust that knob. That if I adjust that knob, something terrible is going to happen. It just overwhelmed me, this idea. I never told anybody, he said, but this idea that adjusting that knob will cause problems, so don't touch it. So he didn't. And he said that often he would take a shower and be looking at the knob, and the thought would reoccur to him in thought form now, but the recollection of this knowing, don't fool with that knob. So about 4 weeks ago, his wife was taking a shower, and she decided to turn the knob. She didn't know he didn't want the knob to be turned, because the foreboding was something terrible is going to happen. So, and he's a very rational guy, but he just left them alone. So she turned it and adjusted it, and then when she went to turn it back to where it wouldn't go back. And the hot water was too hot, you couldn't take a shower, because it would get too hot. So he said, well, no problem, we'll just call a plumber, because he didn't tell her not to adjust it. So they called a plumber, and he came in, and he had all kinds of trouble, and he had to pull out stuff, and they couldn't do this, and they had to get a special part, and they special ordered it. So the shower was out for about a week or several days. And then they got the part, put it in, and it worked. But the day that they were there that got the shower to work, and the hot water to work properly, the water heater was having a problem. So they went and looked at the water heater, and it turns out he's got a fancy water heater for a big house, and it's got some kind of flow system in it, and the propeller or the fan blade or whatever in this system was not working right. So they had to special order that part, and that cost him $800 just for the part. So they put that in, and as they're putting that in, all of a sudden the control panel on the water heater went haywire. And they had two plumbers there. They're working, trying to figure that out. They worked all day to get that going. And then they finally got that going. So his hot water's working. The valve is working in the shower. They got the new part in the fan. And the circuit board is working properly. And he goes out to pay them. And he goes up to the plumbers, and he said they had a look on their face you never want to see on the face of a plumber, which means he's reluctant to tell you what he's got to tell you next. And they said, well, the problem was when we were just finishing up and everything was working, a bolt fell off your water heater. It must have rusted. It just fell off. We weren't even working in that area. So we called the manufacturer and said, can we just weld this bolt back on? Is it just an easy fix? And they said, no, you have to get a new water heater. So now he's got to get a new water heater. So they had to special order this water heater because it wasn't something you just pick up at the store. And then he found out that the store that was going to have the water heater, they said, we're not open on Friday, and we're not going to be able to be open on Saturday or Sunday, and Monday is a holiday. So he can't get the water heater until at least Tuesday to install it. But then the plumbers looked around, they found somebody else who had that water heater, and they were able to get it in. So they were installing the water heater, putting it in, and they finally got it in. Everything worked. He said, do you know what it cost me to have somebody fiddle with that valve? Between the parts and the plumbers and the time spent, and also he said, I didn't have hot water for a week, so I had to go into a hotel. And I live in the Bay Area. It cost me $300 a day to get a hotel room. By the end of all this, and there were other expenses I didn't tell you about, he said, it cost me about $20,000 to get my hot water system working again. But he said it in a good-natured way. And I thought, this is very interesting. This is a man who's not believing in God, who's not a spiritual man. He believes in rationality, although he sees there's flaws, and you can't always know the truth, and that's true. But he has had these experiences all his life, and he knows there's got to be some meaning to this, but he doesn't want to say he believes in God. He says, I think we're just, he has a way of talking about it like we're in some kind of a programmed situation. There's some forced programming things because he couldn't have foreknowledge of these events in this clear, unusual way unless something knows what's happening in the future and it reveals it to him. And he's learned to recognize these revelations, and so he acts upon them, not out of rationality, but just because they always seem to come true. That's fascinating to me, because he's not a religious person at all. He was only telling me about his experiences. He wasn't telling us what to believe or how to believe it. And he doesn't know why it happens, but he knows it's happened to him. Has anybody had something like that? A knowing before something happened that this might happen, but it's different than just a thought that passes in your head or a dream. You dream about doing something. It's somehow a foreboding, a foreshadowing of what's to happen, and you just file it away and forget about it. And then slowly, somehow in your life, or rapidly, it comes true exactly the way the image was of it. And if you've had that thing happen in your life more than once, it makes you want to question, what does that mean? And is there some rational explanation for that? Because your brain can't know what you're going to go through in the future. You can make some guesses. But to have an image of some little tiny thing that you might do that would lead to a problem, or a good thing for that matter, doesn't matter what it is, it's a foreshadowing of what's to happen. That, to me, is fascinating. What it implies is that there's more to this cause and effect universe that we see. There's more than what we see. There's another level or layer of cause and effect we're not aware of, but we see little evidences of it as we go through life. Some people more clearly than others. I find it fascinating that sometimes I see the most agnostic, atheistic people are closer to reality than the religious people. Even though the religious people are talking about this other universe with other laws and rules, and that this other forces are working in our lives and all this stuff, and they pray to these forces to help their life be better and all these things, the atheist who doesn't pray at all, who simply looks at life and tries to be rational, has these experiences that tell him there's more than what he can see. There's more than what he can analyze to life. There's another level. He doesn't know what it means. He doesn't have the answers, but he has to acknowledge it's there. I see it. What does that mean? To me, that's a better proof that there's more to life than all the people who claim their whole theology of there's more to life. And there's, hundreds of religions about some greater force in life that you give sacrifices to, or you give homage to, or you pray to, or whatever. That we've got that connection. There's a yearning to get there, a yearning to go beyond this day-to-day existence we have, but the yearning It's one thing to have a yearning. It's another thing to have evidence occurring in your life unsolicited that you have to recognize and say, I don't know what that is, but that happened. And I want to tell people about it because it really happened to me. That is an interesting place to be. That's a clearer sign to me than all these theologies and passed down doctrines and all these things, because I personally believe that your knowledge of God has got to come from your life, not from some heritage or knowledge that someone else gives you. It's got to come from your own experience, and it only comes because you feel his presence in your life. And you feel the presence and you know it's not you, and the presence changes things. And the more you notice that and recognize it, the more it seems to happen. That's a big deal, because it happens and you say, there it is again. I better not touch that knob. That's such a silly little thing. The knob is a silly little thing. But he had had enough experiences to know that might be something. But he didn't tell anybody. He just noticed that foreboding and just said, okay, I'm not touching it. And then when all things went wrong, he wasn't mad about it. See, normally a person who's afraid to do something and then somebody else does it, I told you not to do that, don't do it, oh my God, now look what happened. He wasn't mad at all. He's saying, you wouldn't believe what happened. And then this happened. And this. And he says, and I don't know if something else is going to happen tomorrow, all connected to this, and I don't know what it is. So it's interesting because his reaction to all this, bad stuff, really, because $20,000 for hot water, that's a lot of money.
Well, it's like he didn't get involved with it.
He didn't.
Yeah.
But why wouldn't he get involved? Because he doesn't have an explanation. He's not saying, this is God working in my life. He's trying to show. No. He says, I don't know why these things happen to me. But he's not stupid. He doesn't want to draw conclusions, but he's going to tell you this. He thinks it's important enough to tell you this. It's just like I heard another story last night. Can you believe this happens the night before I come here? This is on the internet. It's a site I follow. And they're going to drill a well on their place, on their property. They live in the country. And where they live, normally, the wells range between 200 and 1,000 feet deep. And, it's a problem drilling a well. It's a big gamble. So they're expecting, we may have to go down pretty far. So they had money set aside. The well driller comes out, and to make it short, 5 hours he's done. They drill down 90 feet. Pull back because they hit at 90 feet, they hit clay, and they didn't want to do clay, so they pulled back their pipe 3 feet back into the sand and gravel that they hit and left it there. And they've got it for a fraction of what they expected to spend. In 5 hours, their well's done. It's amazing, because they've got neighbors who've got 300-foot wells, and there's one down the road, the 1,000-foot well, and don't have enough water even then. And isn't that odd? But I've heard those kinds of stories all my life. You could say, they were just lucky. And that, like the well driller said, I can't believe this, but you're lucky, and that's it. And it could be luck or fortune or just happen, coincidence. Or it could be that life works in a very strange way, and we don't understand all the rules, and we don't understand all the forces. And as a result, those forces are at work. And actually they're at work in a way that makes you want to question if you can see the forces at work. And if you get emotionally involved in everything that happens to you, you can't get to the point of seeing the message beyond that message. There's a realization. Number one, that you can't know everything, which is a real challenge to man's ego. You want to know everything. You want to know why. Wanting to know why is good, but wanting to know why can be bad. Because you may want to know why too far. And how that's the rules for that, I have no idea. But here I have a very rational, analytical character guy who looks, but he's had these experiences and it's put a wondering in him, but he doesn't act like he's wondering. He just says, this is part of life. And he goes on. He doesn't share everything with us, maybe, but
He just probably lived long enough to see that it's just better to stand back and check it out
yeah.
than get involved with it.
But you got to realize this is a guy who's very rational. He analyzes everything.
Oh, okay.
And he's been talking about global warming. He says, I don't know whether to believe it or not. So I figured I would take the arguments and look at this side and look at that side and find out who could answer this and who can answer that. And he goes through this over a period of a month. He's been mentioning little things he's investigated and what he's found out. But in the end, he says, I can't really come to an answer here because we've gotten down deep enough now on these issues between the different experts, and they're talking climatology language, and I don't understand it. And they're talking about studies and using words I don't know what they mean. So he says, I went down far enough in this trying to figure out who was right, and I got down so far, and now they've lost me. So I guess that's one of the questions I won't be able to, we'll just see how it comes out.
Right.
But he's being very rational there, see? He's following the rational arguments lead to, and he analyzes each thing and tries to see what's appropriate and what isn't, what he can understand, because he knows he's limited. If he says, well, I'm going to find the answer to this question, I'm going to spend 20 years studying this and get a degree in this and a degree in that, so I'll know for sure. He doesn't do that. He just doesn't.
Well, the other thing I was going to say, my story is a little different when you originally started out. But when I was about, 4 or 5, I looked my mom square in the face, and on 2 occasions I asked her, is there anything you need to tell me? And she looked at me kind of weird, like, no. So I didn't get an answer, and then sometime later I asked her the same thing. Well, she couldn't answer me. But anyway, when I got to be like 17, I found out I had another sister. And when I met my sister, it hit me, and I went back to my mom and said, this is what I asked you when I was 5. And she looked at me like, wow, So it was kind of the same thing you were when you started off talking. It's a little different, but...
Well, no. When you had that question, was it different than just asking your mom something? Because you remembered it.
It's definitely because I had...
It was a memorable thing for you. Somehow there was an impulse to want to ask that question.
Well, I needed an answer.
But why did you felt like you needed an answer? Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
So never got one.
No, but, well, you did eventually.
Right.
So I'm curious because if this is one of those events that you're saying, the question is was it something based on a memory, or was it something that just seemed to overpower you, this question, you wanted to have an answer to this? Is there something you're not telling me? Is that, am I getting that right? Or
I think I just sensed that there was something that needed to be told.
Right.
And it never did.
Right.
And then when I was a teenager, my dad slipped, and he says, yeah, your other sister. And I'm going, what? And that's when it came to light. So, But it worked out good. As soon as I met her, we just hit it off.
Right.
So.
I'm curious to know what you learned from that experience. I mean, what does that mean to you? What kind of meaning does that have in your life? As you look at it from way back now, we're in the present, and you look back at the memory and how it unfolded and everything, what does that mean to you? Because you remember it clearly, and it has a meaning of some kind to you.
Well, to me, it was just my mom didn't know. She really didn't know the answers to the question. I mean, deep down inside, she should have shared it with me, but maybe not at that young age. But as I, think about it now, I can't hold anything against her for not telling me, because I don't think she knew what to say. Mm-hmm. But when I got older and I told her about it, she had to think about it too. So.
Did she have any explanation?
No, I didn't need one when I was older.
Uh-huh.
I just said, well, this is what
She didn't say, well, I didn't tell you because I thought you were too young and you shouldn't know.
No.
Did she talk at all about her daughter and why she didn't have a daughter?
Oh, yeah. Afterwards, she explained the whole thing.
Okay.
So.
I was just curious to know, because it's something you brought up, so it made me think, well, maybe there's some deeper meaning to this that you're not seeing, that's why you brought it up. So I asked a few questions to probe a little bit, but
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't.
no problem. I was just sharing it with you.
Okay,
Yeah,
so there's nothing.
appreciate it.
Slightly different than the topic, but it's similar. I'm becoming, more detached from my emotion and honest with that. And things have been happening that, for instance, at work, I have a stack of papers and there's numbers at the top that I have to line them with what's happening at work with the customers. And I had a big stack, and this happened twice, and I have to, when I have to look up the number. And there's, it's a lot of paper. So I got the message on the phone, I have to look up this number. So I have this big stack of paper, so I lift up just for no apparent reason, and there's the one that I need. This happened twice. The last time it happened, I knew personally, just from the way it happened, that it was very stark. Like, it wasn't just luck. It was an actual direction, something. It was just real clear. It's hard for me to explain it because it was very personal. And also another instance that happened, I had lost my wallet, and I just, I was going to have to go to the DMV and everything. This about a day or two had transpired, and I just had no idea where it was. And that one day, the next day I walked into my room, and for no apparent reason, I put my hand down where a pair of shorts were, and it was in the shorts. No thought whatsoever, just boom.
You found your hand going
there
down
it was.
to it.
Yeah, just directed there. And it was like these small miracles that are
They're little
happening.
things.
As I am detaching and losing my will in my life and my own, direction that I was directing myself more than I realized. Now he's coming in more and more and making it more obvious to me that that's what I was missing a lot in my life, actually.
Mm-hmm. It's neat. There's a chemistry to that, and I don't understand it. But I do know that you can add all sorts of things to these things as they're happening. You have a few things happen like that, and then you can add a bunch of stuff to it and kind of make it your own and have meaning to it and all that. I love when these things happen and you don't know what they mean, but you know they happened, and that's it. Then you just proceed in life. And
this isn't really like the guy you were listening to, having a specific thing, but I have definitely had things that I've known, like to do with family members, for example. I've known something's coming, something that usually I didn't want to deal with, but I knew it was coming. I could, but not that I would come and say to you or talk to you and say, "Oh, I know something bad is happening," but just having that.
of course, sometimes it could just be a what do you call it? Sort of an anticipation. What do they call it? Anxiety. Anxiety because of unconsciousness. You're now anxious because you lost your wallet to begin with. There's a sign of unconsciousness. Yes. So there could be an anxiety because you were unconscious of something you should have been conscious of. And the anxiety, it translates into this foreboding, and then it happens. Well, that's a little more rational in a sense. A psychiatrist, psychologist could explain that. Well, the anxiety was over here when you weren't admitting the truth, and now you carried that anxiety with you, and now it happened. Everything came true what you were anxious about, so you look at it as a foreboding. But really, it's just a series of events, and this is how they unfold.
And I've had that too, but this is separate.
This is different.
This is separate. This is not it's not an emotional thing.
Right.
It's been very clear. And as you're talking about, what does it mean to me now? I guess the thing that it means to me right in this moment is that it's just easier for me not to try to figure stuff out anymore, which is a huge thing.
Nobody can see me yelling.
So that's my
a big deal.
story. It is a big deal. It just takes the load off,
Because I'm not fighting against logic and reason and rationality, but I'm saying we've been taught to figure things out. and to get an answer, to get a theology or a philosophy, and get it all to fit together
Yeah.
and explain where you are. The trouble is that where you are is probably not the best place to be, and you're justifying where you are with this explanation. The nicest thing about looking for explanations is if in the end you look at yourself and say, why am I here? I'm reacting to this all wrong. Why did I do this? Why did I, it's a questioning. So that's the value of rationality, is it will bring you to these questions and say, this doesn't make sense. Why did I? And then, but there's another level to life that's beyond the rational. And it doesn't mean it's irrational.
But it's more fun.
Well, it is more fun because it takes the responsibility to figure it out away, but it doesn't mean that you can be unconscious. That's the difference. Most people will say, I'm not going to figure it out, just live it. Well, then they're not going to question. They're not going to wonder what it means. They're not going to think there is a deeper meaning to everything that happens to me in my life. There's a deeper meaning. You may lose your wallet to find your wallet this way. So that when you lost your wallet, you were unconscious, but it really wasn't your fault that you lost your wallet. You were made unconscious to lose your wallet so that you could find it in this other way, and it's saying there's more to life than you see. Because as soon as it's like, as soon as he said he lost his wallet, I was going to check my wallet. It's a guy's thing. Where's my wallet there? Okay. Where's my iPhone? And this is all part of our conditioning to look to see that we didn't screw up. But maybe there's more to life than this whole explanation of everything, justification. What happens is the explanation becomes the justification. The question is, what is it justifying? And why does what is need to be justified? If it is, if you're aware and looking and see what is, where is the need to justify that? And we all have it. We say, well, I did the right thing. Doing the right thing becomes a justification for conflict in you. There's another level to this. Yes, sir.
I've got a story to tell. When I was a little kid, I used to have a reoccurring dream of people going after me that wanted to hurt me. And if I'd struggle real hard to try to run away, I'd become paralyzed.
In the dream.
In the dream, right. And every time I wasn't worried about it, I would float out of their reach. And because the dream would occur over and over again.
That sounds like my life.
Yeah. Well, I often thought, it almost seemed like it was an analogy to struggling in life, because it seems to work the same way in life for me, where I'm so powerless over so many different things that I heard the saying, I don't believe in miracles, I depend on them. That's kind of how it is for me. I mean, I don't know how I'm surviving in my business still with all the changes I've experienced, but I've seen a lot of miracles along that line on a regular basis that keep my business afloat. And, as far as miracles happening, synchronicity, perfectly timed events. I've had things happen that's so obvious to me there's a God that it goes beyond.
There's some other force working in this, orchestrating things.
Yes, and it becomes obvious at some point. It's no longer speculation.
Yeah.
So when I talk to somebody I might encounter who's, let's say, an atheist, and they start debating the possibility or the unlikelihood there'd be a God, I'm like, you got to be kidding.
But you really don't. You're not capable so much of arguing with him. You might tell him a story, but really you don't feel like you have to prove it.
I don't know.
If you find this evidence in your life and you don't find the need to prove it to somebody else, that means it's a deep understanding. Generally, people have a need to prove something to somebody else because they are in doubt themselves, because they have to reinforce it. If you really believe it, you might say, oh, well, I don't see things that way. And the guy might say, well, this is what I need. He overpowers things, and you just, okay. Or you might say, I don't see that way because of this happened to me, whatever. My only point is, the more you have to reinforce and convert others to what you believe, that is, to me, evidence that it's not deeply believed. Because if it's part of who you are, or becoming part of who you are, you don't need to prove it. It's being proven to you in your wonderment. And whether you just live it. And you may say something to somebody or share something with somebody, but if you don't have a need to prove it to them, that is, to me, a sign that it's a deeper understanding It's going deeper in you. Now, it may only go so far and then you can't take it anymore. Because you have to realize that if it's true that there's another force in the universe that science can't measure, but that we see in our own lives frequently, if it's true that that force is there and that force begins to make itself known to you all the time, the more it makes itself known to you, the more it crushes your proud nature. It becomes a life and death struggle, in a sense, inside of you between your proud nature and this other energy that comes in, that it affects things. So that it for a lot of people, because it produces this doubt in ourselves, it becomes so much they can't function. And they turn to drugs, or they become depressed, or all sorts of things happen to them. When you find that you are powerless, which is to say, you're either reacting to the world around you, or you're a reflection of this other world that is coming in you and through you, either way, you're helpless. And nobody wants to be helpless. That's why we want to justify what we are and prove that we're right, or if we're not right, find a way to be right and then be right.
You know, a big question for me is, because we're all facing possible issues in the future that can affect our livelihood, whether it's the economy going downhill or whatever. To this day, I still want to figure everything out, and I don't go on.
But you kind of laugh at yourself.
Sometimes I usually have
to see a smirk on your face
right.
now, telling me this getting to the point. Well, there it goes again.
Right.
I'm figuring that out again.
Yes.
It doesn't mean you're free of it. It just means you see the irony of it all, because you know, I've been through this a million times. This fear, and I got to be prepared, and I got to be ready. When you find that your business keeps surviving by these miracles of timing and coincidence, and you say, how did that survive? Well, there's a message in that. It's saying you can survive everything, and you don't have to be analyzing and preparing and stocking up and doing this necessarily. You may do it just because you end up doing it. Or you may live next to somebody who did it, and they walk away and you walk over next door and you can use it. I'm just saying that can happen.
Yeah, I remember during the Y2K event, not everybody, but a lot of people were very paranoid about what was going to happen. And a lot of people spent thousands of dollars trying to get ready for something that was nothing. Mm-hmm. It came and it went, no big deal. And I remember walking into a store one time looking at another propane bottle, and I don't know, just my gut instinct told me, don't buy another propane bottle.
Not another one.
Yeah, I already had a couple, and I just went with that. And I guess, I've had impulses. I've heard, what do they call it, premonitions or promptings where you feel like you should or shouldn't do something. And I notice some of them are fake. And I know that a lot of people get those sort of things. They're not real. They think that God is talking to them when it's not God at all. Mm-hmm. And so I guess I try to be careful when I get something like that, not to.
Here's the thing. You say be careful. I want to change that a little bit. All you have to do is notice it and not decide if it's right or not. Because if it's real, it doesn't need to be reinforced by your, oh, that's right, or that's not right. It doesn't. If it's real, it's real. And it's just there. It's a knowing. You may act on it. See, what I find, I will think of something to do. Oh, you better do that. Oh, you better tell him that. You better do that. And I'll just see it as a thought, and I don't know if I'm ever going to do it. And sometimes I end up doing the very thing that was in the thought, and I'm watching myself do it. And other times, I never do it. And the thought still occurs to me. You should have done that. But I just see it as a thought. Hopefully. I mean, you don't know the next one may be so powerful you have to act on it. But the beauty is you don't have to decide if it's right or not. That if you watch it and see it and you don't know what to do, what will happen is the things that need to be expressed or done will be done. And the things that don't won't be. And there will be a timing about it so that you may actually, it's like if I drop something, I'm working and I drop a tool, about 95% of the time, I see the tool slip and I catch it in midair before it hits the ground or anything, which is really rare because usually you drop something or you slip something, or I'll be slipping. Like several years ago, I was hammering in a steel stake in the ground with a big framing hammer, and I saw my hand shift, and I saw the hammer half hit the stake, and then I saw the hammer going past. You don't see this, it just happens, because this is not slow motion, but I was seeing it in slow motion, and I saw this thing slip, and I saw the hammer going past the steel stake, and I had wearing shorts, it was in the summer, and the hammer was going to hit my knee. And immediately I let go of the hammer. So it hit my knee, but not with any of my force. So what happens is that you don't know, you see yourself make a mistake, and as you see the mistake, you do things, but the whole mistake was meant for you to be in this place and to show you that actually time can be slowed down for you, or you speed it up. I don't know what, because I was perfectly conscious of the hammer coming down, hitting the stake not quite centered, slipping off the edge of it. I even saw the way my hand in that, as I was pounding, because I was pounding very hard, I saw my hand was slightly out of sync with where it should have been as it was happening. And then I saw it miss it, and then I saw the hammer going towards my knee, and then I let go of the hammer, saw my hand release the hammer before it hit my knee, so it was simply, now theoretically I could have reacted and pulled the hammer away, but I didn't. I just let it go, hit my knee, and that was that. It didn't really cause much damage at all. But I remembered that very clearly because it was almost like time stood still for me to see this. And that's the way it will be with this. The thought comes to you to do something or not do something, and you see it, you don't know whether to believe it or not. You're just looking at it. You don't even think, should I believe that or not? You're not even thinking. You're just seeing it. Eventually, the more you're willing to be there, you will always see things and not know what they mean. And you'll be walking in a room and people will be looking at you and you will see them look at you. And you may even see judgment in their eyes, but you don't know what it means. I'm putting it into words, but there's an attitude you'll have. So you'll see more and more and more of what's going on, but you won't pass judgment on it. Is it good or bad? And what will happen is you will begin to see things in slow motion, and you will begin to see things happening out of your control, but you're not afraid to be in a world that's out of your control. What is the thing a little kid at 5 years old fears? A world that's out of his control. So you take him and you send him to kindergarten. He's assaulted by all these other kids who are afraid of their world being out of control. And the teacher is even more afraid of the world being out of control. So that's where we're at.
On the flip side of this topic, I think this is, people might find this interesting because in the Bible, it talks about how the darkness can come as an angel of light. And you mentioned Y2K. Well, prior to Y2K, in the 1990s, I was very much into survival. You know, I had MREs. I was like ready for Jesus to come back. It was very central in my personality. And it was a control thing. You know, it was a way to make myself feel like I was something. And there were instances at night after I had meditated, I was in bed and it was late at night. And obviously I wasn't doing that meditation correctly. But anyway, I could actually sense the spirit coming from, you know, I don't know where, but it was on its way. It came in my room and it lit up the room incredibly bright. I mean, I could not open my eyes. I was scared too. And it was like a force, like a jet engine in the room, not with the same loudness, but with the incredible intensity. It stayed there for maybe 30 seconds, a minute, then it left. And this happened multiple times. Instead of not knowing, it reinforced that identity of the survival. And that was like it came to deceive me. And I bought it to a certain degree for a while because it reinforced a false belief. Like
I was right. That you were right in what you were doing.
And that I was something special. And it visited me several times. It was very intense, very I mean, a few times it left me in tears. And if I had been wiser, I would have known what it was.
All these experiences happen to you not because you're not wise, because we're actually idiots,
Yeah.
frankly. I mean, as brilliant as human beings seem to be, I see them missing some so simple ideas that a 3-year-old knows. At that stage, the 3-year-old knows it's true and that hasn't learned to disbelieve it yet. But these experiences all happen in their odd ways to teach you, to draw you into a place that our nature does not want to go. So don't hold it up. Don't say, I was an idiot because I did this or that, or I interpreted it wrong. You may make that observation, but don't let that, because if it really happened and it's really true, it's meant to show you something. If it didn't really happen and you made it up, it's not meant to show you something. If you simply look at it, you're not giving it any energy either way. If it's got its own energy, it will continue to affect you. And if it doesn't have that energy and you're not giving it energy by making a judgment, by making it saying it's good or it's bad, or I fight it or I don't fight it, I love it or I fight or I love. Are those
Right.
opposites? Fight and love? Those are opposites, right?
Yeah.
Because love is to embrace something, and to fight it is to run from it or push it off, fight it off, right? So, actually, fighting isn't running from things. Fighting is fighting. But love is the same as hate. Our embracing things contaminates us to judge it's good. And we don't know how to embrace something without judgment. We don't know how to love something without judgment. And that judgment is what will destroy you, because you just have to see. You don't have to pass the judgment. How that can be, the fact is you'll find you can't stop judging. If you're aware, you begin to see, I judge everything. And I got to stop judging. And you try it. And if you're aware, you'll see you're not very good at it. It's still there. The judgment is there before you even know it. Your awareness shows you it's already gotten in. That's the beauty of it.
Well,
the consciousness will show you when you've made the mistake.
Yeah, and the consciousness showed me that there was something doing the judging. It wasn't even me. I was just going along with it. I was riding the train. So as I...
No. If you're talking about these spiritual experiences?
Oh, no. I'm just talking about judgment in general.
Oh, okay.
That,
all right.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, because those experiences, they served, they served...
You don't know what they served.
Well...
Maybe they served enough to tell you, for you to talk today.
It made it real stark, the other dimension, which I don't know if I needed
Because-
that, but it also knew a chink in my pride. It knew my
Right.
pride.
See, there you go.
It knew exactly what to do.
So that even the good thing, even doing a good thing, saving someone's life, can be your downfall.
Sure.
I've known people who did something remarkable and saved someone's life, and everyone praised them so much, they became suicidal.
Mm-hmm.
Because they took the praise and they didn't do anything. They just did what they did. They didn't know why they did it. They weren't feeling brave. They just said, well, I got it, and they
Right.
did it. And then everyone praised them and awarded them, and it became a guilt thing, and they actually wanted to kill themselves because of the praise, which goes to the wrong side of your nature.
Yep.
If you save somebody, it's not because you're noble. You just saved them. If you save them because you're this noble, altruistic person, maybe that's possible. I don't know. But my experience has been, you just do what you do.
Yeah, you're directed.
Well, I mean, no, you may do what you do, and it's wrong. I mean, men are driven by urges, and they do things that they know are wrong, but they can't help themselves. It's built into our nature. And that helplessness, if you see it as it is and don't add to it or take away from it, will begin to change your whole way of dealing with life. And it will eventually get you in a place where you don't need to judge, because you feel your helplessness. There's no need to judge about something. There's no need to prove that to be good. It's not that you want to be bad. You see bad, you see good, but when you're good, you realize I wasn't being good. That's the only thing I could do. It's not, you look in yourself and you say, I didn't do it to be good. I just had to stop him from falling. You know, there wasn't a thought process. You just did it. I tried to save someone's life who was drowning. And they were dead when I pulled them out of the water. And when I put them in the boat, the people in the boat didn't know what to do. And I had to tell them what to do. And I had to climb in the boat and give mouth to mouth. And when the medical guys got there to give him oxygen, they didn't do it right. And they dropped his head on the boat seat, and I was correcting them. So I went to save somebody, and he was dead when I got there. But everything I did wasn't going to help him. It was good for me. Everything there was good for me. You do this, don't do that, get over there. You do why are you doing that way? He's the expert. I'm telling him he's doing it wrong. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. You're put in places to go through it and to see go through it and not take credit for it or not beat yourself up for it. You can spend your life beating yourself up for being immoral, and it's a way evil has of destroying your soul and the willingness to come to reality. Evil is working 24/7 to reinforce all the doubt in you and to reinforce the praise of you that will destroy you because it builds your ego nature, which he can deal with. Evil can deal with an ego nature like it's butter. Peanut butter. Ego is what evil deals with. Evil exists too, just like good exists. No, people do, let me tell you, buddy, evil exists, and it has an intelligence that is brighter than our intellect, but dumb as a rock, because it thinks it's going to win. But it can't stand in the light of the Maker, his energy is here all the time. Evil cannot stand in that light. The more you let awareness in, his awareness in, the more evil is driven to the sidelines and disabled and injured. And he comes back with a roar. And the more you're aware and see your helplessness and aware and see your helplessness and refrain from judging good or evil, you will begin to change, and the chemistry in you will change, and there will become a battle. And it won't be your battle. All you're doing is being aware. And at some point, that evil can be removed and his spell over you can be neutralized because you're willing to be aware in the moment. And that may be good or bad. You may see good things about yourself and bad things about yourself. And the good you don't judge good, and the bad you don't judge bad. That's pretty hard to believe because people beat themselves up and they make themselves great. And I'm telling you, you can't do either one. They're both wrong. The same thing. Love, what we call love, which is embracing, and hate, which is repulsing, are both the same process. And somebody would say that's impossible, but what happens is loving mothers raise mass murderers. How is that? They love their children so much that they produce a criminal and a wicked person. They produce abusive husbands. They produce daughters who are temptresses, who bring out the evil in men. These are loving mothers. How is it this love does that?
It can't be love. It's not. It's something else. But
Well,
it's,
it's
they
what
think
we
it's
call love.
They think it's love. They fully think it's love.
But what is love? If that's not love, if embracing somebody and saying, I love you, I'll do anything for you, if that's not love, what is love?
Well, it's something a little entirely different. I mean, it's what I've received from you and Roy, actually. You know, it has a different flavor. But it can be harsh, but it can be very kind and sweet, that from my experience. I know it's not something we possess.
Because
really.
everyone, if you look at our civilization, and I'm sure if you look at all the others, I don't know the other cultures, but my impression is love is a big thing people talk about. I don't. Maybe in some primitive tribes in the African jungles or something, they don't talk about love. But in the French culture, and the English culture, and the Swedish culture, and the Chinese culture, everybody talks about love in different ways. My question is, what are they describing? Now, there is this talk about love that comes out of the New Testament, but those are just translated words. We're so far removed, we don't really know what those people meant by the word love, and you'd probably have to go back through 2 or 3 languages to find out the word they used, and you might even find out, it's just like the word for judgment that we call judgment in our language, it refers to the judgment of the king. The king had the judge power in these early cultures, and there's a certain word they used for the king forbearing judgment. He didn't judge means he decided not to judge the case. Very special word used for that, and that's the word that was in the early scriptures. Well, that's not our word when we talk about judgment. We don't talk about that. What I'm saying is you can lose a lot of meaning if you go back to words and cultures and everything long ago. But you look at cultures today and how people talk and what they say and what they call love. Everywhere I turn, I see these stories of death and destruction, and everybody's talking about love. I need more love in my life.
Yeah, I think they're using the wrong word. But
I don't know about the wrong word. They're describing something that's real, and we all get it, and we love the story, and we see the contradictions, but we somehow don't put all that together and say, there's something wrong with what we are. And I don't know what right is. I don't know how to love and not do it the wrong way, not embrace.
Doesn't Corinthians cover it pretty well? You know, it talks about love being patient, love being kind, not keeping records of wrongs, and something about believing all things. And I figured it has something to do with empathy, because I know if I see somebody that sounds broken and I can empathize with where they're at and I'm feeling happy myself, I kind of wished what I'm feeling onto them.
Mm-hmm. It's a little hard to know what you really mean because you're talking about an actual experience you've had, but I'm a little dubious when the word feeling comes in. It puts my antenna up because then I want to know, okay, because somebody could use the word feeling, like somebody could say, I'm not feeling right today. But they're really not using the word feeling as a sensing thing. They're simply saying, I'm a little bit out of it, but I'm not sure what it is. They could mean a lot of things. So the word feeling could mean, just like the word love could mean different things. But feeling, if you love and get a good feeling, because that's using love to get something. If you hate and get a good feeling, or get a feeling of power, that's dangerous. Well, I'm going to say it's the same with love. If you love and get a feeling from it, that could be dangerous. And whatever your love is, whatever you're calling love, may be something that's not as good as you think it is. And our society, and most societies, talk about love as though it's a wonderful thing. And then they tell you stories of people who loved so much, they caused all this death and destruction. And I'm going to say, well, wait a second now. Is that the same love as the love that's good for us? They might say, well, they just love too much. Oh, what does that mean? Anyway, we take the use of the word love, it's just matter of course, because it's in everything. And I watch these dramas, these mystery dramas. The whole deal is we're going to figure out the mystery, who did the crime, but you get people involved. And they're always talking about this, and love is always in the mix. And theoretically, your detective is dispassionate and doesn't listen to love. He finds the facts, or she finds the facts. But everybody loves to get it all mixed around and get some emotion in there and get the story. But we're always talking about love, and love is in these tragic situations. And I could probably sit down if I was crazy and write 45 definitions of love, because 45 situations that are entirely different use the word love to explain it, or to justify it, or to undo it. Like if a family is crazy and one of the members kills somebody, they think we didn't love enough. Let's love each other more.
Didn't Roy used to define it as not hating?
Yeah, we defined it as in a negative. But if I say love and hate are the same thing, and I say, so you shouldn't hate, does that mean you shouldn't love? Well, now everybody say, you can't say that. You can't say you shouldn't love. Love is what makes the world go round. But I'm saying this process we call love, and there are exceptions, because there are people who use the same word we use, but they're not doing the same thing. But an awful lot of people use the word love, and they think it's the opposite of hate. And if Roy says, what did you say he said?
I remember him saying something about that we're not capable of manufacturing love of ourselves. The best we could do is to not hate.
Not hate.
Yeah.
But really, it's funny because Roy says these things. Don't hate, not hate. He's saying hate's a bad thing. But then he tells you, but you can't help yourself. So why bother telling me? It's a bad thing if I can't help myself. There's a reason for this. I'm not saying he's wrong. He's setting in motion. He's talking to a half-hypnotized audience, setting in motion conflict. It's like he says on his record at one time, in the early records, he would say, be outspoken with kindness and patience. When I saw people being outspoken, I noticed a lack of kindness or patience. I felt the energy to be outspoken and tell me off. There was no kindness and patience in that energy. We don't know how to be outspoken. It's a setup. He sets you up so that if you're becoming more conscious, you say, wait a minute, that wasn't good, because I wasn't patient, even though what I told him was right. He is an idiot. So what I'm saying is that the words are meant to set in motion a conflict in you. And if there's a part of you that wants to be aware, you'll notice the conflict. That's all you need to see is the conflict. If we're always trying to judge and be right so we don't feel the conflict and we don't see it by our own doing. Yeah. But the conflict between these forces, these love and hate forces, this emotion and this judgment, the conflict, if you want to be conscious and you see it in little ways, not big ways, in little ways, if you have a hunger to be conscious, you will begin to change. You will begin to see how powerless you. See, if Roy were to say to his audience, okay, you're all idiots, you're hypnotized, and you're powerless, and anything I say, you're going to take it and use it the wrong way. Where's the audience left? They're not left anywhere. They mean, why am I coming here? Why? I'm an idiot. I'm going to go walk off the cliff. No. He gives you little bits and pieces, but there's a deeper story. And for those who want to hear, for those who want to see, be a better word than hear, they will go become conscious. They will use his meditation not to be mesmerized and hypnotized. They will use it in a different way to wake up, and they won't know they're doing it. Their soul will be wanting to wake up to the lies in life, as opposed to the one who just wants to go to sleep more and feel righter, feel justified. That's the difference. And you never know which soul is which and which one wants to see and doesn't. So that chemistry, that's what he's triggering, and that's what he's giving to you in these different contradictions. It's meant to set up this whole process in you. What is real and what isn't, and what do I do about it, and how do I deal with it? And he can't tell you in some psychological language how to do that. He's just got to talk with you. I'm putting words in his mouth, but this is my interpretation of it. And this is this is what it's meant to me. And I didn't know it meant this to me until many years later, because it came in and I did. It came in and I went on a journey. And I went on my own journey, not knowing what was going on. And now I'm here today as part of that journey. And I only tell you what I've learned so far, but I don't know, just like the guy I started with who just told you the story about the hot water regulator. He didn't know why he had this premonition, but it was there. A little bit neurotic in a sense that he thought about it so often, but he just knew it was there. He didn't know why. And then this whole magical story played out in front of him, and he's kind of laughing as he's telling it. And he's still not over with it yet. And he still hasn't written all his checks. But he sees the humor in this because he realizes we're not in control in life. And as much as we want to be, we're not. There's more to this than we know, and there's processes going on we don't understand, and it's not a bad thing. It's because if you see it, because if his appetite is for what is, he doesn't care how he finds out what is. He just wants to know what is, and he doesn't know why he does. And the next guy just wants it to work out.
I was just thinking about how in my life, sometimes I wonder if I define love by its opposite, because I've had situations where I've blown up at somebody and I walked away feeling so troubled inside, I might lose sleep for 3 nights. And when I finally apologize or see my part of it, recognize where I've messed up, all of a sudden I feel this incredible peace and this warmth again. And, as far as defining what love is, it's a bit of a mystery to me. I'm sure like most people, I've probably deluded myself. And, for me, it often has been feeling based, but I always thought empathy must have had something to do with it.
Well, empathy is in a sense seeing it from the other guy's point of view, right? Is that empathy?
Right.
That's what you
identifying with the person.
Right. And you see, well, from their point of view, well, what that is it's a reserve of judgment. Because even though they did this crazy thing, from their point of view, it didn't seem so crazy. They didn't mean it to have the effect it had on me. You don't really forgive them. You just see, oh, okay. It's like a kid. If you got a little 3-year-old kid and they do something stupid, it's hard to blame them. They're a 3-year-old kid. They do stupid things. It's like someone talked about something that happened recently in the news, and there were some teenagers doing something that wasn't appropriate somehow. And he said, give me a break. They're teenage boys. They do dumb things. They don't think about what they do. This is what teenage boys do. Well, it's true. And so it's easier if you empathize, in a sense. It's easier not to pass judgment on them because you say, well, I don't see the whole picture. But it could be they needed somebody to yell and scream at them, because if they kept doing this foolish behavior, they might have died. So that if you came back in 3 days and apologized, you said, I was right in what I said, but I was too angry, I'm sorry. That may help them. So it may be that they needed you to get upset, to stop them, and then you needed to see you're upset and apologize. And they were to realize, oh, not doing it because he yelled at me and he got me mad is not enough. He apologized for the yelling, mean yelling. There's more to this, not just a matter of stopping this crazy. Because some people do the crazy stuff just to get you mad. They're addicted to your anger. And he could actually wake up. See how it could all reverberate like I hit the microphone then. So what I'm saying is life is this mystery, and all we're required to do is to have our eyes open. And what you will see most when you have your eyes open is that you're trying to close your eyes. You're trying to avert your gaze. You're getting vague about things. You're squinting a little bit to see it just vaguely. You'll notice that about your awareness, that you're trying not to be aware. And you just notice it. And then when you try to be aware, you notice that, because that doesn't work either. When you try to be aware, that means you're focused on being aware. Okay? Guess what happens to people who are focused on being aware? They miss all the things on the sides. Yeah, they miss all the things on the side, and things go wrong. They say, well, I was focused. I was going,
Yeah, you're using your own will to try to get that awareness.
It's not about your awareness, it's about his awareness. And you can't regulate his awareness. The beginning of awareness is your awareness. Oh, I'm not seeing things. I don't see things. I don't wonder what. And that journey will lead his awareness to come into you. His awareness is not your awareness, and it doesn't speak to you in words.
Right.
It just affects you.
Yeah, and I notice now that I'm really awakening, thank God, that how difficult it is actually to meditate, where before I thought I was just humming along,
Right.
and I wasn't going into any thoughts.
Right.
But that wasn't the case.
No, it was a different thing you did,
Yeah.
because there's lots of meditations.
Yeah, I just was zoning out.
Yeah.
But now I'm aware, like I'll go from finger to finger, finger. I barely can get to, my pinky before I'm off. I'm off somewhere.
And you
then
see
I go
that.
back, now I'm
No, but-
off, and it's
but
like,
what I think meditation is the realization when you're off.
yeah,
That millisecond, it's what the meditation is meant to bring you to, that millisecond. And you only get a glimpse, and then you go back to your task, and then you get caught in your thoughts, and at some point you realize you're caught in your thoughts. And if you watch yourself, if you're aware enough, this happens enough times, you'll begin to see the emotion when you catch yourself. There'll be an upset. There'll be a little charge there. And you won't see that yet, but it'll eventually become conscious of that. And what it is a yearning and thirst for what we call awareness, but it's a state. Mm-hmm. And that will leave an emptiness in you. And that emptiness, when it gets enough, will begin to be filled by another energy. And the same energy that will fill that emptiness is the energy that's leading you to the state of emptiness.
mm-hmm, yeah,
We embrace with love to fill the emptiness that should be filled with his energy and awareness.
right, pleasure.
And unless you have that emptiness, you cannot be filled. And everybody is impatient to fill the emptiness. You can make donations at the Foundation of Human Understanding at FHU.com and make comments on Roy's broadcasts on Facebook or YouTube. Give us some feedback, make comments so we know where you want to go. Thank you.